And here Elizabeth became angry and raised her hands to strike him, saying, "I told you to be quiet." But Ian grabbed her hands and pulled her closer, saying, "Are you going to plead with your fiancé like this every night too? And I wonder what kind of face he will make on his wedding night if he finds out that his bride has already been taken many times by a humble servant." And here Elizabeth said to him, "I know you hate me, but can't you bear me for a little longer? I don't have much time left anyway." And surprised, Ian said, "You don't have much time left? Do you mean until your wedding?" And here he dropped her on the bed, saying, "Do you want me to continue serving you at night until then?" And here she said to him, "It's me, Ian." And he said to her, "Speak clearly. What do you want from me?" And here she started saying to herself, "How was I going to answer that? That you take me away from this place? And that you love me forever? No, I wouldn't dare. My brother died long before I was born, but it felt like only yesterday. I couldn't get the image of my parents out of my head, mourning in black on every anniversary of his death. And there was only one thing I could do to make them happy." So she lied to him and said, "You know there's nothing else I want from you, Ian. All you have to do." And Ian said, "If you say so, your wish is my command." Ian remembered when he was a prince, and one of the servants presented him with a ring, saying, "My king, we have recovered the royal seal that the worthless bastard stole." And Ian said, "Good." Then he took it, saying, "While we had to lose our great ally, Duke Toro, in the process, it was still worth it to destroy that vile group." Then he thought to himself, "Not to mention that by retreating to this remote castle, I was able to find something small and interesting." And then someone said to him, "Your Majesty, your army is ready, and we can besiege the capital of Siena immediately if you wish. So please give us the order, your Majesty." And Ian said, "Let's not act hastily. There's still more to enjoy here." And the servant said, "But your Majesty, we must eliminate this usurper as soon as possible." But Ian caught his hands, saying, "Tell me, did I ever lose my crown in the first place? I'll simply return home after a long journey, won't I?" And they bowed to him, saying, "Yes." Then he remembered as he was walking with Lena. And here my queen said to him, "When I said that there was still more to enjoy here, I meant, were you talking about another woman? But shouldn't you prioritize returning to your palace? And here, Lena, it seems that the only one eager to return to the palace is your head." So she bowed to him and said, "Forgive me, my lord. I spoke out of turn. I was simply thinking about what would be best for you and for Travasta." Here, Ian approached her and said, "I wonder, what punishment should I give you for speaking so carelessly?" And she said to him, "Please forgive me." Here, Ian smiled and said, "The shed was really full of dust. All right, I'll grant you the honor of dusting my hair. Then I'll forgive you for your arrogant comment." Lena didn't understand and said, "Excuse me, are you trying to make me repeat myself?" This was because she noticed that Elizabeth had noticed him standing with her. So she did what Ian wanted and was about to dust his hair. Therefore, Elizabeth thought she was trying to get close to Ian and touch him. So he was thinking to himself, "Elizabeth has become angry whenever I talk to another woman, and she has exaggerated her reaction, especially when it was Lena. Considering how much she dislikes her, and every time she saw us together, she couldn't contain her anger and her whole body trembled as she anxiously asked for my love. It was somewhat amusing. She usually fills me with a strange sense of pleasure, but I don't feel any better at all." And here, returning to reality, he continued, "And at this time, this little bit of amusement during my seclusion was not something I expected to enjoy for a long time. After all, it was always just a trifling matter from the beginning. My loyal followers who infiltrated with me into this impoverished countryside and served the ignorant castle. And another fool who was about to get married, a pitiful fellow without a noble title, and Viscount Roat, who cared more about his daughter's menstruation than her health, and who dared to sell the king's woman to a low-ranking noble in an attempt to continue his pitiful lineage. Moreover, there was I, the king who didn't have long until his return to Siena. Yet I stood watching everything happen with bitter resentment, as if tasting a bitter flavor. And this whole situation was ridiculous. Here he kissed her and continued to think to himself, I can't ignore what Lena said. Was it because I had no choice but to admit that I was wasting my time on this woman while ignoring the thing that... And here, Elizabeth said, Ian? And he replied, Yes, my lady. Then he looked at her and continued thinking to himself, she was a woman who was born psychologically fragile and emotionally starved, to the point where she acted as if she couldn't live a day without me. And yet she would marry? You demand this and desire it. As he did this with her, he continued thinking, and the moment I leave your bedroom, you're filled with anxiety. So how would you react if I told you I was going to betray you with another woman? And with Lena, he threatened to grab her and kill her in front of my eyes. But I don't know when she was young, she was used to using violence against me. She would sob and force me to pay attention to her. She would complain about my affection, even if it wasn't genuine. I knew she was watching from that balcony, and I used Lena to provoke her. And everything was intentional. I wanted to push her to the absolute edge. Then I wanted to see how she would collapse. And even though I already knew that her fragile body wouldn't be able to handle her outbursts of anger, however, whenever her other beautiful face turned to me, she would collapse viciously in anger and frustration, and I felt as if I were sharing a deep and passionate kiss with her. And Elizabeth's despair was the proof of her affection for me. So what else could this be but pure love? And here he said to her, Madam, I hate it when I'm mean to you. Yes, I understand. And here she began to say to herself, Ian, while I don't know why he seems a little kinder today. And here she remembered when he told her, it was because she felt satisfied. So she continued saying to herself, could he have meant what he said before? A brief display of sweetness during a long period of bitter indifference. At least for that short moment, Ian was very kind to me. And here she took off her clothes, saying to herself, so just for a little longer, and if this slightly sweeter version of Ian can tolerate my selfishness for a little longer. And here she said to him, Ian, I'm Ian. And here Ian said to her, if it's not important, can we talk about it later? And he took off his shirt, saying, I need you now. And she said, okay. Then they did it, and she thought to herself, regardless of how Ian feels about me, I still want to be a good woman for him, especially more so since the day I first forced him to possess me, at least I wanted to be a good woman for him in bed. But suddenly Ian smiled and said, Who told you to act so vulgarly? And here she continued, saying to herself, there was no guarantee that this cold man would fall in love with me in my lifetime, but as soon as he softened a little and showed me the slightest bit of warmth, I felt that there was still hope that he could change a little someday. Then maybe I would be able to give Ian his freedom happily. And here, after a while, when she looked at him, he asked her, are you awake? And she said, yes. I've been wondering this for a while, but are you from the north? And here Ian said to her, yes. And here Elizabeth said to him, I knew that. I can tell from your accent. Then she asked him and said, where in the north? And here Ian said to her, where the king lives. And here Elizabeth said to him, and Ivana too? And he said, yes. Have you ever visited the capital? But Elizabeth said to him, no. I've never left Logden before. So he looked at her and said, then you don't want to try living there? And here, Elizabeth said in astonishment, the capital? Then she stood up and said, How many gold coins do you need to live comfortably in the capital? And here, Elizabeth said this because he didn't mean it. But she continued and said to him, honestly, the last thing I can give you, I was actually planning to give you everything. About this time. You saw my jewelry box, right? I'll give you and Ivana the best and most expensive jewelry I have. I've been looking forward to this moment for a while. And here she continued, saying to herself, although I knew it wouldn't be enough to compensate for everything he did. However, I wanted to give you a generous amount of gold and thank you for your services. And here, Ian said, Madam. And here she continued, saying to herself, then perhaps Ian will be so moved that for once, he might look at me with warmth in his eyes.